Hello, welcome to the first lesson. Today's lesson is going to be based on psychodynamic approaches or Neo-Freudians. Neo-Freudians were basically people who were really inspired by Freud but who added some inputs to Freud's theory and developed their own schools of thought. So they believed in him but they also critiqued his theories. In order to do this lesson well, please make sure that you're pausing whenever you need to. You can go back in the lesson and listen to what I explained once again. Make sure that you're making your notes in your classwork notebook or you're underlining in the textbook as the lesson is going. And do attempt the worksheet that I will be sending along with this presentation. The worksheet is going to help you and help me understand how much you've followed from the lesson. Okay? So, beginning the lesson, as I just mentioned, Neo-Freudians were people who were inspired by the Freudian way of thought. Now let's go back to the three important things that Freud had spoken about. Freud had spoken about the three levels of consciousness. So he said we have a conscious mind, a pre-conscious mind, and an unconscious mind. Second point, he said within the unconscious mind, we have three competing forces, the id, the ego, and the superego. The third important thing, he spoke about the psychosexual stages of development or the 5-stage theory of personality development. Do you remember this? Yeah. Now, coming back to the Neo-Freudians. Neo-Freudians, they were inspired by Freud, but as I mentioned, they developed their own independent theories as well. And some of the people that we will study about are Carl Jung, Karen Horney, Alfred Adler, Erik Fromm, and Erik Erikson. Okay? Coming to the first guy, that's Carl Jung. Now, do you remember what Carl Jung is famous for? Some type theory he had given? Okay. He'd spoken about extroversion and introversion. Let's see what he spoke about when it comes to personality development. Now, Freud said that human behavior is driven by sexual desires and aggression. Yeah? So, Freud talks about all of these hidden impulses, these animal-like instincts that are there in our unconscious mind. Jung, however, had a more positive view of people, and he said that we are guided just as much by aims and aspirations. So, you see how he differs? He's not looking at people as all bad. His theory of personality is called Analytical Psychology. Now, the most important thing that Jung spoke about is something known as the collective unconscious, which consists of archetypes which are universal in nature. Now, what is a collective unconscious? Going back to Freud's theory, remember Freud said we have an unconscious mind? So, everybody who's listening to this lecture right now has their own personal unconscious mind. Jung said all of us listening to this lecture and everybody around the world, we have a part of our mind that we share, which is a collective. That is called the collective unconscious. And this has something known as archetypes. Now, what are archetypes? We'll understand with the help of an example. Let's look at the third example given here, which is fear of snakes. Okay? Now, Jung said that no matter which part of the world you live in, as a human being, we have a tendency to be scared of anything that is creepy and that's crawling. Now, so something like a snake, right? So any reptile would be scary to us. Jung said the reason it's scary is because our forefathers or our ancestors were often bit by snakes and they died of snake venom. So we over the years understood that snake is harmful for the existence of human species, right? And this particular fear got lodged into something known as the collective unconscious, the part of our mind that all of us are sharing. So no matter which part of the world you live in, even if you don't know anything about snakes, you will still be afraid of it because it is already present in your collective unconscious. Does that make sense? Another example is that of God. Now, God is a concept that is universal in nature. So no matter which country, which village, which part of the world you live in, most people on an average, if you're not an atheist, tend to believe in a higher energy or something that is the creator of the world, right? So, Jung said that once again, this is a part of the collective unconscious, a common idea that is already present in our minds. Okay? Now, Jung was extremely spiritual in his approach, and he was a philosophical guy. So he spoke about the concept of unity and oneness, something that is spoken about in a lot of religions across the world. And he also said that there is wisdom available in our personal and collective unconscious, and we must learn how to tap that wisdom that we already have. Does this make sense? If you need to pause the video and you need to make your notes, please do that. For now, I'm moving on to the next part. Let's look at what Karen Horney had to say. Now, please look at the spelling of her surname. It's Horney. Make sure you're adding the E here. Horney was a big critic of Freud. Now, she was a woman, and she had a big problem with the way Freud considered women in his theories. And Freud considered that women are the inferior of the two sexes. How did he say that? What did he mean by that? If we go back to the psychosexual stages of development, the third stage, the phallic stage, when little boys and little girls are coming to terms with the fact that their bodies are different from each other, Freud said that the moment little girls understood that they don't have a penis, they develop something known as a penis envy. Okay? So he said that women start feeling inferior because they're biologically inferior to men. Horney thought that this was absolutely ridiculous, and she said that neither gender, neither sex is supposed to be inferior to one another. We're all equal. Another thing that she spoke about is, she said that psychological disorders were caused by disturbed interpersonal relationships during childhood. Now, what she means by this is, she proposed the concept of something known as basic anxiety. Now, what I want you to imagine is, imagine a small baby. Okay, so this baby is around 4 months, 5 months old. Now, little babies are very helpless, right? They can't have food by themselves. They can't have water by themselves. They need someone to clean their poop. They need someone to bathe them, and they cry all the time. So babies, when they're crying or when they're feeling anxious, want to be loved by their caregivers. Now, this caregiver can be a parent, it can be a family member, it can be anybody who's taking care of the baby. Horney said that little babies who were taken care of when they were crying, when they were held and loved, they end up forming healthy personalities, as opposed to children who were not cared for or who were not picked up and loved when they were babies. They will develop something known as basic anxiety. What this means is, if the parent's behavior towards a child is indifferent, discouraging, and erratic, okay? And when this happens, when the child feels like, I'm not safe in the world, I'm not cared for in the world, then the child develops a feeling of insecurity and resentment. This resentment will first start towards the parents, and then it spreads out towards everybody in their life. So these are the little babies who see the world as an unsafe place. Make sense? Okay, please pause the video if you need to. Moving on to the next guy, Alfred Adler. Now, Alfred Adler gave the theory of individual psychology. Remember, Jung had given the theory of analytical. Adler has given the theory of individual psychology. He also differed from Freud by saying that human behavior is purposeful and goal-directed. So again, he has a positive view of human beings. And he said that we are motivated by personal goals in our lives. Now, let me tell you a little story about Alfred Adler, so you'll understand his theory better. Now, Alfred Adler, when he was a baby, not really a baby, like a child. When he was a child, so let's say in grade 2 or 3, he was a very sick baby. By sick, I mean he was physically unwell. And because he was physically unwell, he had to continuously depend on the adults in his life to take care of him. Okay? Now, from his own helplessness, he devised this theory. And he says that all of us are born with something known as an inferiority complex. Every individual suffers from feelings of inadequacy and guilt which arise from childhood. What this means is, again, that when we are children, we're not able to do a lot on our own, right? We are dependent completely on our parents. And this dependence makes us feel helpless. It makes us feel inadequate. And because we have to continuously reach out for support, it also leads to guilt in our minds. He said that resolution of this complex is essential for optimal personality development. Now, if you look at point number 3, which I've already spoken about, where Adler said that personal goals are the source of our motivation, he said that the only way to remove inferiority complex is by setting small goals for yourself, personal goals, and as you keep meeting these goals, your inferiority complex would eventually dissolve. Make sense? Okay. Pause if you need to, else we can go on. The next guy is known as Erik Fromm. Now, Fromm viewed human beings as social beings who can be understood in terms of their relationship with other people. Now, you must have heard this a lot of times, that humans are supposed to be social animals, right? Which means we thrive on the relationships that we develop with other people. So Fromm also said the same thing, that human beings, our personality develops as a result of our interaction with other people in our lives. So personality and character traits develop as a result of our experience with other individuals. Now, Fromm spoke about the importance of love and tenderness in developing someone's personality. And he said that people who experience love and intimacy and tenderness in their relationships tend to develop healthy personalities. And he also spoke about growth and realization of potential, which comes from one's desire for freedom and striving towards truth and justice. So if you look at his theory in totality, you will see that Fromm is bending a lot towards the humanistic school of thought, which saw people as innately good. So that's why I see there are some common points here, like realization of potential, desire for freedom, striving for truth and justice, etc. Moving on to the next guy, whose name is Erik Erikson. Now, this is a very interesting theory. Your book mentions it in a very small quantity, but if you would like to learn more about it, I highly recommend reading his theory. It makes a lot of sense. Now, remember that Freud was more interested in id. He was more interested in the unconscious mind. Erikson, however, was more interested in the ego, the part of our unconscious that is trying to balance the id and the superego. Quick question for you, okay? Which principle does the ego run on? Is it the pleasure principle? Is it the morality principle? Or is it the reality principle? Please write the answer down in your notebook somewhere. Which principle does the ego run on? Great. I hope you've noted it down. Now, remember Freud gave the 5-stage theory of development. So he gave us 5 stages from infancy to adolescence. Erikson, however, saw development as a lifelong process. So he did not stop at adolescence. He spoke about development till the time that an individual dies. And he said that during different stages of life, individuals face certain crises, and successful resolution of the same is critical for healthy development. What does this jibber jabber mean? We'll understand this with the help of an example. Now, you guys are in the stage of adolescence, right? You are teenagers. And Erikson said that the crisis that you face at your particular age is known as identity versus role confusion. So the number one thing that any teenager in the world is trying to figure out, they're trying to figure out, who am I? What do I stand for? What are the things that I like? What are the things that I dislike? What do I like doing? Who are the kind of people that I like to hang out with, etc., etc. And so you will see teenagers doing a lot of different things at the same time. For example, one day you might be trying out the guitar, another day you might be trying to play football, another day you may be chilling with one group of friends, another day you may be trying to figure out another group of friends. So teenagers are constantly experimenting with a lot of new things, and this is perfectly normal behavior because they're trying to form their identity at this stage, and they're trying to understand the different roles that they can assume in their lives. He said that this particular crisis is extremely important to be solved, And only if you're able to solve this, only if you're able to successfully understand who you are and what are the things you like and dislike, can you move on to the next stage, which is young adulthood. Okay? So his theory is called the psychosocial stages of development. Freud had given psychosexual, Erikson has given psychosocial stages. Okay? That's a very big difference. Now let's come to the criticism of psychodynamic theories. So all of these people put together plus Freud, there were certain people who of course criticized this particular school of thought. Let's look at those criticisms. Number one, their theories are largely based on case studies. Now, if you did chapter 2 from last year well, you would remember what a case study is. It's an in-depth study of an individual, an event, or an organization. Psychodynamic theorists mostly develop their theories by studying some people. So it's, of course, if it's based on a case study, it's difficult to generalize this. Scientific testing of the concepts is difficult since the concepts are not properly defined. For example, let's look at the concept of id, ego, and superego. Now, Freud said that these are three forces that reside in our unconscious. Yeah? However, how do you scientifically test the existence of these three forces? There's no way to tangibly look at these three forces, is there? So because scientific testing is difficult about a lot of these concepts, this theory has been challenged. Now again, the third point is related to the first point. They used small and atypical individuals. Atypical means people who are very different from the general population as samples for advancing generalizations. So it's often one of the biggest critiques of a case study is that it is so unique and it is so special and pertaining to the individual that it's done on, that it's difficult to generalize that particular learning. So this is again a criticism. And Freud has been criticized for using males as prototypes to explain personality development. Again, if you remember what Horney had said, this was a criticism that she also had for Freud's theory, that he mostly refers to the male psyche and the male prototypes to explain personality development. So feminists had a huge problem with this theory. Okay, this brings us to the end of psychodynamic approaches. I hope that this made sense to you. If you would like to, you can go back and listen to or watch this whole thing again. Once you're feeling confident, then please attempt the question paper that I'm sending along with this. Thank you. I will send the next lesson tomorrow for you to try out. Bye-bye.